it's Jessie. Welcome back to Spooky Easy. I'm so glad to see you here. Thanks to all of you that had subscribed to my channel from my last video. I really appreciate it. I'm so glad that you decided to stick around to listen to all the scary stories that I'm going to be coming out with. If you're new here, welcome to my channel, Spooky Easy, once again. Basically, the aim of the game is just to tell a bunch of freaky stories, either from the internet on Reddit or whatever articles I might find. I plan on telling my own scary stories, and not just that, I also plan on drinking while I do it. I love to call it my liquid courage, so please feel free to join us. Happy Thanksgiving. Yes, today is Thanksgiving here in Canada. In the US, it is in November. In Canada, it's in October. Usually everyone just gets together today to have a huge, gigantic turkey dinner. Or there could be vegan options as well. I don't know. Haven't really looked into that. In any case, usually everyone just takes the day off, tries to relax, enjoy time with family. Though this year might be a little bit different just because of the pandemic, of the coronavirus. Unfortunately, numbers are going higher every day, but I'm not going to talk about that. That's not what my channel's about. Today, I am just going to entertain you on some stories that have some kind of relevance to Thanksgiving. I said some relevance. I'm not here to go into the history or the relationship of the Native American / Canadian people and the Pilgrims. I'm sure you can find plenty of articles that go into that subject. I'm here to freak you out with some stories that you may not have heard about, and genuinely I do want to delve more into the spiritualism of the Native Americans / Canadian people, just because it is so interesting. It is so symbolic, which I really appreciate, and I just want us to really listen to these stories because they are pretty freaky. There are so many creatures that you could just easily look up on the internet, coming from different tribes of different Native American / Canadian peoples. I love researching into stuff like that just because it's not just that it's about creepy creatures or cautionary tales or anything like that. Everything has meaning when it comes to their stories, and I appreciate that. Like I was saying before, I love it. Everything from the Ogopogo in British Columbia, which is on the west side of Canada, similar to, like, say, the Loch Ness Monster, except a lot more spiritual. It has, again, a lot more meaning. To creatures like the Chepi, which are kind of like ghost-like creatures, or I guess kind of like fairies. Once again, I don't claim to be an expert on such things. As I mentioned in my first video, I don't know much about anything, but I'm trying. I think that counts for something, right? In any case, let's delve more into these creatures, my favorite creatures that I love to talk about. Before I get into that, I just wanted to let you know what I'm drinking today. It's once again from Sir Henry of Pelham. It's a Baco Noir wine. It's kind of rare. You don't really hear about it very much. You hear more about like the Pinot Noirs, the Cabernet Sauvignons. However, this one is more fruity than those kinds of wines, which I appreciate a lot more. Definitely, I would recommend this wine for anyone that just wants something easygoing and refreshing, as far as red wines can go. That being said, because it is a red wine, it has a tendency to stain my lips when I don't want it to. It kind of creates a brand new red lip, which I'm not going for right now. So, to rectify that, or to salvage what I have here going on, I have a metal straw. I'm running a little bit low. What service? Now that I have my drink ready, we're ready to get into some stories. I actually also have my sage going on. So if you happen to see some smoke coming around or anything like that, don't worry. I intentionally put the sage there to kind of ward off any evil spirits or anything like that that might be hearing, listening, wanting to attach itself to me or come after me or whatever. Better to be safe than sorry. The first set of stories that I'm going to talk about are about a creature that I had no knowledge of until I played the game Until Dawn on the PS4. Yes, I'm talking about the Wendigo. The Wendigo is widely known among Native American / Canadian tribes, especially I would say in the east coast of Canada, I would like to say, Great Lakes region, kind of in that area. Not just Canada, but also the US. When I say Wendigo, you're thinking of that creepy creature in that video game. And yes, it is terrifying. I especially hated those quick time events. I could never get them right. I always died like almost immediately. But when they talk about the Wendigo, it's more along the lines of it being an evil spirit, kind of like a creature that manifests itself once the evil spirit takes hold of a human individual that it comes across. It brings about a sense of insatiable greed. Unfortunately, cannibalism is a major part of that. What I came to gather from the video game was that if you became possessed by this evil spirit, you resorted to cannibalism, and eventually you became into one of these disgusting creatures. Obviously, that is an act of great evil, very taboo in all kinds of, not even just in the Native American Canadian tribes, but also in everyday culture. You're not going to see somebody going around saying, oh yeah, you know, the other day I had a delicious Karen. It was great. It was a delicious Karen sandwich. Now, with all that being said, all foolishness aside, let's get down to some scary tales, or at least some explanations as to what these creatures are. Cheers to you. Here we go. This first post comes from somebody named Vic_P on Reddit. It's called A Tale of a Native American Creature. The tribes of the Great Lakes have a creature, neither human nor animal. This creature is one that does not leave the forest and is strongest in the cold winters. Many, including myself, believe this creature is real, very real. I do not suggest hunting it or trying to find it, you just won't. And if you do, it will not matter for long. So as a forewarning, do not read this before dark, and do not read it before eating. Just a suggestion. I don't fully remember the tale, but I will tell you what I can remember. I'm about to have Thanksgiving dinner, so thanks for that. And it's dark. The story starts before any white man had made it to the New World, after man was put on top of the circle of life, and after the wolf and the boy story. It was midwinter. The past few days it has snowed heavily, leaving a very thick layer on the ground. 3 hunters walked through the forest on a very late hunt. The village had poor harvests and were unable to gather enough meat, forcing late hunts into the village. Hunting during the winter shows a form of desperation. The only animals left around will be small game and a few larger game that most likely are starving or sick. Bears have gone into hiding, deer have moved west, and caribou are farther north. The hunters had traveled for 7 days and had run low on food the 5th day. The hunters had found a few rabbits along the way. The meat being frozen left no fear of it spoiling. The 7th night was the night they decided to cook the rabbit. The first hunter started a fire using dry pin needles and dead branches under a 100-year-old pine tree. The second hunter searched the area to see if he could find any tracks or burrows, only to find what seemed to be a fox den that had been abandoned long ago. On his way back to their camp, he found hoof prints of some form of deer or moose that seemed to circle the camp about 200 feet away from the campfire until they seemed to vanish. That's not good. The third hunter looked for a stream to gather water. He found a small stream. He smashed the ice cover on the stream to gather running water. He drank some to subdue his own thirst, only to spit it out a moment later. The water was putrid and smelled of rotten meat. He followed the stream up to find a warm carcass of a deer. The antlers shattered into small pieces all over the ground and its body rotting with small lines of steam rising from the body. As he approached it, the smell worsened. The head was caved in and the body torn to shreds with bits of putrid hide hanging off small shrubs and twigs sticking out of the snow. The hunters gathered by the fire and told each other what they had found. The first hunter tells of the great tree, saying that it must be a blessed area due to the tree's age. The second hunter tells of the hoof prints and says that the deer here are large. The third hunter tells of the rotting deer with the steam rolling off of it with the smashed antlers. The first hunter goes out to get more firewood so he can create a large fire to scare off any wolves in the area. The second one sharpened sticks into points surrounding their camp so that any bears would be stabbed before getting to them. The third hunter goes to honor the dead deer, believing that no animal would do this and that the only spirits could protect him, burning the deer into ashes so that it may move on. That night, they cooked the rabbits into a stew with a few edible roots to sustain them. Once they had finished their meal, they hear what sounded like a deer let out a blood-curdling scream. The first hunter threw more logs onto the fire. The second hunter grabbed his spear, and the third hunter took off into the dark to find the deer, taking only a knife with him before the other two could stop him. The two hunters waited a while until the first one, stoking the fire, said he must have gotten lost and he must have set up camp down the stream. The second one, who sharpened the stick, said he would be back by daylight. They figured some wolves had caught a wounded deer. They lay down for the night, but not before stoking the fire and making sure the spikes were sharp. In the morning, they woke up at dawn to find that the fire had been stomped out and the spikes had been pulled from the ground and put around the fire in a cone with the corpse of the third hunter impaled on them. His knife had been placed at the base of the cone on the spikes. The first hunter ran to the old tree believing that it would protect him, only to find it dead and dry. He ran back to the camp to tell the second hunter that they needed to leave the place immediately, only to find that the second one was gnawing on his own bloody arm, growling like an animal. That was not the most concerning, though. Standing over him was a tall, skeletal-like creature with antlers sprouting from a strange elk-like head with human teeth. Its neck seemed normal, but the body was that of a mummified human. Skin stretched across the ribs like hide over a tent frame that was too large for it. Long human arms ending in what seemed to be deer hoofs protruding from the wrists. He heard the creature speak. Without moving its jaws or head, it repeated, "More. More is needed. You must get more." The mad hunter, who had chewed through the flesh on his arm, grabbed his spear and staggered towards the second hunter. "I need more. More, I need more. Hunger, more," he muttered as he wandered towards the sane hunter, as he backed off looking for a weapon or an escape. The towering creature straightened its back, standing up above the spikes that it had tampered with the night before, plucking the third hunter off of it and dropping the lifeless body into its human mouth. The first hunter ran. He ran in a straight line. He reached the stream and started to get his bearings, then went upstream. He walked for a few hours before having to stop and take a drink. He was hungry, but knew that he would not be safe for long, if at all. By the time he had entered a clearing, he had forgotten the reason he and the others had come out here and was angered by the fact that they did not leave the moment they had run out of food on the 5th day. He dropped headfirst into the soft snow in the clearing, cursing himself for his ignorance, and then drifted off into a quiet sleep in a bed of snow. He would have not waken up if it was not for steam being blown into his ear. He opened his eyes, turning his head to be greeted by the creature's soulless and empty eyes. That was the last sight he would ever see before its mouth opened, swallowing him whole. Do not go out in the dark. Do not think you are safe. Do not pretend to think you understand what is happening. You don't. And that's the end. I will say that was quite an intense story. I did not expect for it to be so graphic, but honestly, I didn't expect any less at the same time. I really enjoy these kinds of stories where it's telling of the fear. Just you could feel the raw fear in this person, how they wrote the story, that genuinely was that of genuine bone-chilling kind of foreboding, I would say, throughout the entire story, up until the end, of course. And this is exactly what I had actually envisioned how a Wendigo would look like based on the stories. I did first see the Wendigo on Until Dawn, but something just didn't feel right with it. I think I'm going to post some pictures just so you can see what it looked like compared to how the Native American Canadian people think that it looks like. And I think to me that's very, very interesting. I'm going to read another story from somebody's account, modern day, of them seeing a Wendigo more recently. This story was posted on Reddit by someone called Chillin' and Godzillin. I love that, actually. It's called Wendigo Scare. True story. Hi, so this is my first post on Reddit. I just wanted to share the story and see if something like this has ever happened to anybody else. Just to start off with some backstory. My group of friends had started making a nasty habit of joking about the Wendigo. My friend Stacy and me didn't for a while, just due to the fact that we believed in the supernatural. But after a few months, it grew on us, and not knowing that the Wendigo can actually be triggered by such things, we joined in. Biggest mistake ever. That's how it always goes, doesn't it? I had just moved into the country, and we enjoyed making trips into town to have a few drinks, which is about a 30-minute walk from my place to town. At night, the first 10 minutes after leaving the bridge that leads out of town is pitch darkness with no street lights. After that street, lights are very sparsely placed, which can cause for a very creepy walk back without anything happening. So with that all in place, let's continue. Yes, please. Stacy and I begin our night walking to town, get some beers, and have some fun. Shortly into the night, something slightly strange happens. We receive a phone call from her little sister at home crying and scared because she saw someone sitting on my friend Stacy's bed. She calms her sister down and asks her cousin to check her room for her sister at home. Everything is fine. No one's in the room. Also, ghosts and weird things happening at our house were very common. So sighting like this was strangely regular. I get that. We continue our night. Into the night, we meet a guy who seems pretty cool. He's riding a bike and tells us he's pretty drunk or something. We decide to hang out with him for a bit, wanting to meet people in town. A ways into our hangout, we are sitting on a park bench and the guy is laying on the ground in front of us. Suddenly, my friend stands up and says it's time for us to go. I shrug and agree and we get going. After getting away from him, she tells me how the guy bit her ankle. The day after, she had teeth bruises on her ankle. It's not right. Kind of flustered the guy would do that, we continue our walk out of town. Finally, we pass the bridge, which is our last source of light for the next 10 minutes. We turn on our phone flashlights and we turn on some music, trying to ease the spooky feeling of being in the pitch darkness in the middle of nowhere. Suddenly, we hear a voice behind us. We both jump. It's the same guy on his bike. He asks us if he can follow us until we reach the fork in the road. We need to go left and he needs to go right. Still slightly creeped out, but almost at the street lights and the fork in the road, we agree. Regardless, he had to go that way and so did we. After a bit of walking, we finally reached the fork in the road and the first street light. We sigh with relief, hoping he would leave. But he turns down our way instead of going the way he needs to go. Now at this point, we're thoroughly creeped out. We try to ignore it and keep walking, holding our breath, wanting to reach the next street light, which is some ways away. Finally, after what felt like forever, we reached the next street light, which is also for some reason a small graveyard. I hate my area. I would too. Once we reach the street light, the guy stops dead in his tracks and doesn't move any further past it. As we turn around, the guy looks like he has suddenly passed out on his bike, his head down and shoulders slumped. I was about to say something to him, but my friend stopped me and said we really needed to leave him. I agreed, not wanting to be around him much longer. After a few seconds, I take a peek over my shoulder. He's gone, vanished. The worst part is, even if he had turned around and started pedaling as fast as he could, we still would have been able to see him some ways down the road. I panicked, but also slightly relieved he wasn't there anymore. We continue walking, trying to pretend we aren't creeped out, walking quickly from the streetlight to the streetlight. Finally, we reach my driveway. My driveway is a long road of darkness. We hadn't put any lights in yet and tried to brighten it. We began to walk slowly, holding our breath. Some weird feeling of dread coming over me the closer and closer we got to my house, and the further into the driveway we entered. I don't know what came over us, but the sudden feeling of you need to run, and you need to run fast, came over us at that same time. We took off, bolting at the same time without having to say a word to each other. We got to my front door. I unlocked it quicker than I ever had before. We get inside. Just as I'm about to get to the door, this hellish scream or growl, whatever the sound is, came out of nowhere. I could hear it getting close to the door and steps. I slammed the door closed and locked it and dropped to the ground in fear. We both sat there, holding our breath, scared to even breathe. Fast forward a couple of weeks, me and Stacy had forgotten about what happened. How would you forget something like that? Suddenly, it came up in the convo and we tried to find the sound we heard. Nothing worked. We looked up every possible animal, even animals that weren't likely. We spent an hour on this until we decided to look up the sound of a Wendigo. It was the only sound that fit perfectly. We don't joke or talk about it now. I won't. I hate to. Even writing this post has made me feel scared to bring it up. And that's the end. I can't even imagine. That story was absolutely bone-chilling to me. I really hope that these stories aren't similar to, I feel even worried saying the word, skinwalkers. Now, I'm not going to talk about skinwalkers too much just because apparently they are attracted when you talk about them too much. Fortunately, I got my sage going. I said a prayer before starting this video. I don't want anything bad to come about after talking about this, but pretty much they stalk you to find ways to come after you until they have coveted you, pretty much. The reason why I bring them up is because I recently found out about something else on the Reddit forums. Now, I don't know where the skinwalker starts, and according to the story, a chindi starts. A chindi is the spirit of somebody that had recently died. That's all the badness, all the bad energy that this person had within them before passing away, all the unresolved negative things that they couldn't bring to harmony before passing away. It comes out in the form of when they exhale. It's their final breath, and it brings out this negative energy in the form of a ghost or a spirit. And I feel that that's very telling in terms of how ghosts and things like that are perceived in today's modern world. Because when you think of ghosts, you think of something that's evil, something that wants to bring harm onto you. Maybe the Native American Canadian people came onto that first. It's very interesting. This story comes from somebody on Reddit called Rebel Without a Sauce. These names are super creative. I can never come up with them. It's simply called chindi. There's a creature that they tell stories about in the American Southwest. The creature is called a chindi. Usually when someone sees a chindi, it looks like a coyote walking on its hind legs, upright like a person. Chindis walk out of sight along lonely roads at night, waiting for travelers. It does not matter if the travelers are on foot or in a car. The chindi will wait until the moment is right and cross the path of the traveler, just out of sight, trotting across the road on its hind legs. This is how the chindi marks its victim. Once a chindi crosses your path, it will follow you for weeks. It stalks the victim by creeping just out of sight and circling. You would never know it was stalking you except for an occasional twig snap or a slight movement in the darkness. It is hard to know if you are being stalked by a chindi. They say that a chindi is a type of skinwalker. It can look like a normal coyote or even a person. The only way to identify a chindi is by its eyes. A chindi's eyes always look the same, dull and deep. They won't always reflect light like a normal animal's eyes. Anyone who stares directly into the eyes of a chindi becomes entranced. The person will stare into its eyes of a chindi, slack-jawed until a chindi decides to look away, but by then it is too late. A chindi does not maul or eat its victim. After days or weeks of stalking, it will lay in wait somewhere until the victim looks into its eyes. Chindis are very patient. They will wait in a location for hours until a victim glances right into its dull, empty eyes. Something happens then. The victim's spirit is totally consumed and something else is left behind. A wise person might notice the small clues that he's being stalked by a chindi. Twigs snapping or a bit of movement just outside the shine of a car headlights. Unfortunately, it is not a fate easily avoided. If someone tries to escape the chindi by staying indoors at night, the chindi will just stare in through a window until the victim happens to look out. In fact, this is the preferred method of the chindi. It will wait outside at the window at night, covered in just enough shadow that it won't be noticed until someone is looking directly at it. Most people won't remember to avoid looking out the window even when they wake up in the middle of the night. Even if you do remember to be aware of the chindi, it's difficult to resist the impulse to peek when there could be just something outside the window. Just to make sure there's nothing there. Just a quick glance. This to me genuinely sounds more skinwalker material. It's one of my biggest fears is seeing a face outside the window, and if I see a set of dead, dull eyes, I would lose it. I'd be like, all right, well, time for a drink. What do you think? Do you think it sounds more like a skinwalker, or is this kind of like a skinwalker, evil spirit, maybe part Wendigo? kind of entity. Do you know any stories that I might not have heard about? If there are those in the Native American Canadian community, I would love to hear about them. I'm all about that. I just eat it right up, right up. Well, that's about it for today's stories. Thank you so much for joining me once again. I am going to be having my Thanksgiving meal. I'm starving. Need some more to drink along with that as well. Happy Thanksgiving to everyone. I hope once again that you stay safe. Please have a virtual dinner if you must. Please feel free to leave your stories or your comments down below in the comment section. Please be nice. I'm still new. I'm still learning the ropes. Everyone starts from somewhere. You can always feel free to send your stories to the email. I'm going to post it up here and in the link in the description below as well. Please feel free to send your stories there if you don't want to publicize them on the comment section, and I'll be sure to look out for them. Please click the like, subscribe, and notification bell so you'll be first to know as soon as a new video comes out. Thank you once again for joining me. Ciao for now. Everything from the, there's a fly. So that now that I have, bleh.